So today I'm going to be talking to Duncan, who's a copywriter, about, well, exactly what copywriting is, the things that you should look out for when you experience any form of marketing. So Duncan, what is copywriting?
It's not as boring as it sounds. It's basically just it's marketing writing basically to sell things. So anytime you've your customers have bought a tipping service or anything like that, or anyone's trying to sell them something, that's the writing part of that is called copywriting. Yeah, that's about it, really.
Yeah.
So it's my job to do that, write that
so
stuff.
It's just essentially a type of advertising.
Yeah. I guess for me, I have been writing kind of long form copy, so I never had the job of writing for big billboards and things like that. It was always long kind of sales letters and things like that, which is like the traditional stuff in the tipping service world.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll definitely speak about long copy in a bit, as I know that's something there's definitely a bit of a marmite, or maybe not even marmite, maybe just lots of people hate it.
It's just a hate situation. Yeah.
But for a bit more background first, how did you get into copywriting?
I just wanted a job writing, and I just I applied for a job and the job brief didn't actually say what the job was for. It wasn't until I got into a room with the guy that employed me, and he put a sales letter on the table and just told me to look at it, and I thought it was ridiculous. And then he told me it had made about 2 million. It was like a 20-page letter, and he said, "Oh, that's made about £2 million." And I was like, "Okay, well, I need a job, so I'll do this."
I obviously work for the same company. We're talking about Agora here, and and I think that's pretty much everybody's reaction when they first see it. It's like, okay, so does this company sell scams, or what exactly is it?
Yeah, because it's hard. It's very salesy. It was always well, maybe it's changing now, but it has always been very, very marketing, very salesy copyright. It's like borderline car salesman shouting at you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I guess with long copy, most people look at it and just think, how on earth does anybody buy from that? So what is the secret? As you say, some of these letters make fortunes.
I think there's a lot of, it's kind of like I've got a lot of ideas about this, I guess. I think that the fundamental thing that gets people to buy, it's not necessarily the length of the copy, which a lot of people have an issue with, which I understand, that it's really long letters. But you can have a really long letter and it not make any money. It's mainly the idea, the core kind of idea that that letter's kind of telling people about. And really, you can have a 5-line advertisement or a 30-page sales letter, and it's the idea that's behind it that's got to connect with people. That's the main thing. But the reason traditionally that there is such long promotions for tipping service and stuff like that is because traditionally it came from the newsletters. So it was you used to get a newsletter in the mail, and then the final product that you bought was also a newsletter. So the actual advertising kind of mimicked the product. It's a bit different with tipping services, but also I guess the argument is it's persuasive writing. So they in copywriting, it's the idea is that you're using kind of persuasion techniques to get people to buy stuff, and we can talk about why that's both good and bad. But I don't know if I just answered your question, or why are these letters so long? I think part of it's tradition, and part of it's because that's what worked better. When you measure the sales and the amount of money being made from the letter, that's the longer ones were working better. I'm not sure how much that is the case now, because we just consume media in a different way, basically.
Absolutely. I know. I never wrote copy through Agora. My job was obviously very different, but I know one of the things that customers definitely get frustrated by is how repetitive it can be, and I guess that's definitely a deliberate ploy.
Yeah, I guess part of that was like, well, like people don't read. When you read stuff online, you generally skim read. So the idea behind it being repetitive is, A, is you're hammering like the points home a lot, but also B is like, if you're skim reading and only reading about 30% of it, like, and there's certain things that the copywriter wants you to take home, then those things are the things that are repeated, because like you're just not reading the entire thing. But then you could also make the argument like, I'm not reading the entire thing because it's so bloody long.
Exactly.
I mean, the when I started, the main argument for them being, the promotions and the sales message being long was just that it converted better, it worked better, so that's why it was done, basically. But, people were more likely to buy off the back of that. And I will say, like, I do think people read, and me, like, people read a lot before they buy stuff. It's just we don't like today, like this, with the internet and stuff, we don't do it in one go. Like, before I buy, I don't know, even a book, I'll read a load of reviews. I might read people's opinions in forums and stuff like that. And accumulatively, I've read a lot about the product I'm going to buy, just not on the same page, if that made sense. Anyway, that's just a thought.
No, it makes total sense. And as you say, maybe it's becoming less so now, but some of these long letters are incredibly successful. You mentioned the example earlier, but I bet you must have other examples, especially in the US, that made millions of pounds.
Yeah, America's kind of on steroids because like they just have massive, like a massive audience, but like some of their promotions, I know that one of their promotions made something like $12 million in a 24-hour period, and it was like an event, and obviously that's not all profit, but that's still an insane amount of money, and at the end of the day, also it's like text and I think it was audio as well, so it's kind of like, there's no overheads for this kind of stuff. I want to talk about the bad aspects of this as well in a bit.
Sure. So obviously you worked for Agora for some time. You're not there anymore now, are you? So what other companies have you worked for, and are they all quite similar in how they do copy?
I'd say I've worked for, so Agora is quite a big company, and I worked for them for 6 or 7 years, and then the last couple of years I've been working with quite a few smaller companies in the gambling niche. So guys like yourself mostly that work with tipsters to bring people tips, or a few people in the finance area as well, but small, kind of like a few like one-man kind of operations, really, like where a company's just run by one person. And I don't know, so I kind of a mix, but generally smaller companies is what I've worked for. And I mean, a lot of what I've done, I'd say like the copywriting is kind of, the thing that, as I said before, like the thing that makes the copywriting work is it isn't really like all the words and the long letters and stuff. It's just that core idea, and I can talk about like different promotions and stuff within the gambling world. And I don't know if this is relevant, but like, it's like the need for that as well, because part of me thinks like, why do you don't even want to need advertising in the first place. The product just kind of, if you've got a good product, you should just be able to tell people, hey, this is the product, and people should just buy it, because it's good. But the part of that, I think, is if you're the first person to offer a horse racing tipping service, you can do that. If you're the 10th or 100th person, you need to be able to say why it's different, and it might just be different because it's it's better than the others, or the person running it's more trustworthy, or whatever. And sometimes I think the people who run the services can't see what the best thing about that service is. Sometimes, like, some people can, and then if you can, then you don't need to hire a copywriter. But if you need help, basically, because one of the things about, if you're a tipster and your world is just tipping, like, all about that. And sometimes sometimes you need a middleman, which is what a copywriter to translate what you're doing to like a kind of audience that isn't as technical as you are. But like in an ideal world, middlemen wouldn't exist, and I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
I guess in a way, it's a lot of the things that people see as bad about it are a bit of a vicious circle because, I mean, for example, the more exaggerated the copy up to a certain point, the more it's likely to sell. So
yeah,
you sort of get a bit stuck.
To a point, yeah. I think that's kind of the thing that I've noticed is, and I've been guilty of doing that. Never like just exaggerating in terms of like, okay, we can talk about these take a proven track record and talk about how much you could have made. But instead of using £10 stakes, I'm going to use £100 stakes and say that in the copy. But still, like, if you're scanning through all the numbers you see at £100 stakes, and even though the information is there, people's expectations are suddenly super high for the returns from that service, and like that's good. That's maybe good on one hand because like you can make more sales, but it's like the worst thing you can do is not meet people's expectations, basically. And when I first started doing this job, like I didn't really have anything to do with the customers. Like my only job was to like make promotions sell as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like I wasn't even sort of I didn't have anything to do with looking at refund numbers or anything like that, which is really bad because like you just if your focus is just selling, just how many people can I get to buy this, like that's when you start getting into sort of like the moral kind of stuff with advertising and like how far do you push it. And also like I think you get that when like you get that naturally in an industry that's hasn't seen anything new in a while. Do you know what I mean? Like there's only like so many horse race tipping service promotions people can look at. Do you know what I mean? So you have to be. So it's like, okay, well, we want to sell ours because we think that's the best, but how do we do that? And you have to be more and more creative with the advertising. But that can mean that if you do that badly, you become more and more removed from the actual product that you're offering. And I've definitely made that mistake for products in the past. But like, I definitely try and not do that anymore.
No, I know what you mean. It's difficult because, as you say, when there's so many, for example, horse racing tipsters being advertised and the marketing makes out it's great, it's not as easy as just, even if you've got a fantastic, genuine, legitimate track record. I know you've done some of the advertising for a service called The Syndicate, which I ran with Miles Treadwell for a while. And that sold really well when we launched it, which in a weird way is sort of the worst time to buy something because it's unproven. And then a few years later, when we're writing new promotions and the track record's fantastic, it's suddenly much harder to sell because it's not the next big thing, even though it's genuinely a better service.
And I think people do obviously get burnt subscribing to bad services. And then, it's the question, well, how is this different? And maybe sometimes, just saying, well, this guy is better, But I think one of the things as well is, I don't know if this is relevant to what we're talking about, but there is a short-term kind of bias when you first sign up to a service, which is something that the people I've worked with tell me about. Is like, even if we get a promotion that works really well, the next thing is then, well, the tipster needs to have a good 2 weeks of tipping and make a profit. Otherwise, we're going to see huge refund numbers. And that's kind of, I understand that because it's like, you've just paid to subscribe to something new and then it's not making you money. But then I'd say like all of the tipping services like need to be looked at over like long-term periods, don't they? So
absolutely. It's
difficult, but then, that's how people react, you know what I mean? Like, and you can't say, oh, don't do that. They're the customer and it's not everyone. Like some people understand and stick to things for, give them more of a chance. That kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. On that note, I assume you've written both the services which you think are really good and services which are perhaps more questionable. So are there any things that readers can look out for when they're reading a promotion, sort of signs perhaps that the service isn't all it's cracked up to be?
To be fair, on the gambling, because I've written in the past for finance and gambling, and to be on the gambling side, I've basically only written for services that have been good. And I think, at least like working with you and other smaller publishers, like it's been the case of like, well, if those services aren't good, they quickly disappear, because if they can't keep up a good track record, then people won't subscribe to it, and they just kind of the services just die or whatever, and then you get a new tipster or whatever. But on the finance side, like some of the tips that some of the stock recommendations and stuff, they were like 2 years out, so you don't really know. And I mean, judging by whether something's making you a profit isn't the only value you get from subscribing to something. Like, you also get kind of analysis and insight, and sometimes you get a community of people to speak with, or you can email the person and learn about investing and stuff. And but just looking at it from like a profit standpoint on the finance side, like some stock recommendations you won't know for 2 years until it's in profit or not, or so it's, and then is the service even going to be around then, and things like that. And just generally speaking, like, I guess I trust people that are more like, to use the phrase, like having skin in the game. They're more like
absolutely.
They're the ones betting and stuff. And whereas on the finance side, people aren't legally, in the UK anyway, they're not legally allowed to make the same trades that they're recommending, which makes sense because you're not front running stocks and stuff. But at the same time, there is an aspect of like, well, you want me to put my money in this? Like, I don't know. Yeah, I've always thought, like, if I was going to give £10,000 to somebody to invest, I would have always given it to the gamblers that I worked with. Which when I said that to my mum, she's like, "What?"
Yeah, well, it's funny, isn't it? It's like there's an inherent almost snobbery, or I don't know what it is, against people who bet in sport. Whereas in reality, investing it's just as much gambling.
It's gambling, yeah. There's a real, and I think it's dangerous sometimes when you read people talking about investing and not seeing it like that. And I know you can take low risk bets on investing, betting in big stocks or index funds and that kind of thing, but it's still a risk. Do you know what I mean? There's still, anyway, yeah. Sorry, yeah. The other part of that was, your question was, what were we saying? Like, have I written for?
Well, I suppose if you're writing for a service which perhaps you don't fully believe in, or that there isn't that much evidence of it being a great service, like how do you get around that? How do you make it seem great?
One of the things I think is the less a copywriter or a marketer has to say, the less legitimate kind of benefits they have to say about a product, the more kind of like salesman speak will be in the promotion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So rather than dealing with facts and saying, here's the track record for this service, here's the credentials for this guy, we're so confident in this, we've got a long, you've done stuff like where you've said, oh, we'll pay your subscription back if he doesn't make a profit in a year and stuff like that. Like, if instead of that stuff, there's just like generic kind of promises and monetary promises that aren't based on any kind of like track record or any kind of thing, or there's no kind of like real real insight in the promotion, in what you're reading. Like, if I don't know, sometimes it's difficult because, like, as a copywriter, like, one of my jobs is to make complicated ideas simple. Do you know what I mean? Sure. Like, so here's a guy who's a tipster, and he does loads of really interesting stuff, and he has like a core thing, and one of the things I try and do is like, how do I like come up with the central idea that fits that then is going to be attracted to people. So promotions generally aren't very technical things, because at the end of the day, they're kind of sales copy. I think that is kind of changing, because more and more, like, there's so like more and more advertising is basically like teaching, and you know, like, and I think in part that's because of stuff like YouTube and things like that. Like, you know, I can go on YouTube and learn. So like, I'm just more inclined to like trust somebody who teaches me stuff for free or shows me stuff for free, or you know, and then
definitely. So I know there's definitely a trend now towards webinars and sort of advertorial, which is where there's an article which is leading towards a sale, but still offers sort of genuine information.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I think there's a level of cynicism involved in that, in just, well, there can be basically like I think that's one of the things to look out for as well, is kind of, I don't know, like, because people are like, marketers are obviously aware of that trend, you know, like they've seen people genuinely give away a lot of free information on YouTube and you know, there's people like giving you know, like proper qualified investors and betting experts on YouTube and other places giving away, you know, high quality information for free that, you know, 5 or 10 years ago you would have had to pay for. And there's marketers who see that stuff, and then it's cynical, but then they do it with the sole goal of selling you something at the end, which I think changes it. You know, like, it changes it from a group of people that genuinely want to help other people and build a community or whatever, and are responding to their community, to, again, it's just like, we're going to kind of like offer people learning, but then with a kind of cynical goal of selling them stuff. And where the learning is just kind of rubbish is basically what I'm saying. Like, do you know what I mean? Like if you're going to do anything like that, like, you really need to be actually like showing people what they don't, you know, something they don't know, or
So,
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I feel. Sorry.
So I guess in summary, a good way of judging it would be the quality of the free products, or the free guide or report or seminar, or, you know, if it's a high quality, then the chances are that the paid part of it will also be a high quality.
Yeah, and I do think it's okay. Like, there is a lot of free stuff out there, but also it is okay for people to like charge for their expertise. Do you know what I mean? Like, a lot of guys you work with have been doing it for really, you know, like developing their skills in, you know, tipping or whatever for like you know, really, really long decades. And it's like, when they you know, so somebody who doesn't have as much experience from them can learn a lot from them. And, you know, like, there's nothing to say they have to give away that information free. It's just like, what do two people decide together is the okay kind of value for that? Do you know what I mean? Or what they want to pay?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm being waffly.
No, absolutely. It's something. It's a question I've never really understood. Sort of people saying, "Oh, if you're so good at betting, why would you sell your tips, and why should I pay for them?" Well, you just, the same reason why you pay for an accountant to do your accounts, or a builder to build your bathroom. You're paying for somebody else's expertise.
I think one of the problems is, like, it's so hard to tell who's just full of rubbish today. You know, like, because I don't know if it's just like, you go on Facebook and it can't just be my Facebook, because the amount of ads I get from, you know, because I'm a copywriter, I work in the marketing world, so like, the ads directed at me are like all, you know, marketers trying to sell marketing strategies or whatever. And, you know, half of it is just absolute rubbish. People that have never worked with actual businesses, and just kind of like, so it is really hard to like work, like, it's almost probably a skill to work out like who to trust, and, like, you know,
definitely,
who is actually genuine. And but I think you can tell that, like, when you listen to somebody talk, like, like, talk to one of your tipsters, and they can speak for a long time. You know, like, they have insights that you won't have heard anywhere else, because they've learned them through the actual practice of doing what they say they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess on the flip side of writing promotions for services which aren't great, I guess it's a lot easier for you to write a promotion for a service which is good.
Yeah. Like, yeah, definitely. Like, that's, I mean, in an ideal world, you just, like, the headline of an advertisement would just be, "This service is amazing." You know, like this, you know, And I did like I have written for a lot of gambling products that I was actually really excited about, like ones with machine learning or just like a tipster that's really, really good and like, or does something really different. Because like for me, it's like really interesting to like research and then write about that stuff. And then I think also it's like interesting for customer as well, but a customer because it is if it's a new way of looking at whatever the betting is on and stuff like that, like. It just gets into a problem when you've got like I said, like a kind of stagnant market, and then you're kind of having to invent, or a bad product, and then you're kind of having to like invent, like make a bad product look good. And then once upon a time I didn't have the luxury of choosing jobs, so like I just wrote for what I was told to write before. So. I mean, I could have gone and joined a charity and something instead, but I didn't.
Are there any promotions in particular that stand out?
As in good or bad?
That you've written, or even that you've seen, maybe that you've not necessarily written yourself.
The sales promotions that I really liked reading were you don't really see them anymore, but they were kind of like when people were selling finance newsletters and maybe like sort of betting newsletters as well, maybe, I don't know, and it was when the actual sales letter read like a newsletter, so it was more like you were reading like a kind of like a really interesting story about like a really interesting story, and then you were buying the product because you wanted to read more of what you just read. If that makes sense. Like the person writing this is a great writer, and they've got really interesting views, and I want to subscribe to this because I'm going to get more of that. But then like it definitely shifted into like instead of buying to get more of that, it was like you're just buying to get the secret, if that makes sense. And that's actually kind of like my main thing as a copywriter has been being able to like I like writing promotions that are kind of secret based, I guess, like sort of more intrigue based, which again is, like sometimes that is a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. Like I'd say like I wrote for a golf service and I wrote a promotion that worked really well. And I did that by, like not talking about it being golf for a while, like, like talking about the other aspects of it. And I called it like the bookie blind spot and that kind of thing. And I think that's good in that case because the service I thought was really good. Sure. And people were just kind of not that interested in golf when they hadn't seen the other benefits before that. And from what I know, the refund rates were low. So it wasn't like, there was a disconnect between the product and the promotion because it didn't, it didn't lean heavily into golf on the promotion. But then at the same time, that kind of thing is like, if you don't start with this is a golf promotion, this is a golf tipping service, then there is like space to mislead people, and then that's when it becomes, that's bad, like. I would say the good thing about like all of the people I've worked for is there's always been like everywhere, well, apart from in the States, but in the UK, there's always like refund policies, so people can get a refund if they're not happy with it. But really, you don't really want to be like. I mean, you don't want, and I've written promotions that have had high refund rates, and that's bad for everyone, like, and it's, I'm just rambling a bit, but it's hard, like everybody wants their work to be good, and as a copywriter, your work is ultimately judged on how much you can sell. And that was kind of the industry I worked in, was like, it's hugely competitive, and no matter what anybody says about, like, retention rates and all this kind of stuff, the number one metric that you're judged by for your work is the conversion rate, how many people you get through the door. So it's hard, and then that focus kind of like it promoted the wrong kind of attitude, because that's not focusing on the customer, like the concern there isn't like, oh, we're going to make this product the best for the customer and that's going to attract them, or like we want to get people on and keep them for the longest amount of time. Like we want them to be subscribers for years. And I've worked, I've worked with people where that's their focus, but in the past, my old job was not like that. And it's hard, like, but I think like it's generally shifting away from that. And I think part of that is because the internet is so open and there is so like, you can get so much good information for free out there. So it's kind of forcing hard selling companies to do that less, I think, and kind of, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm wrong.
No,
it's still
I
awful.
think so. I think it's largely a good thing that there's lots of good free stuff out there now, because it forces people who are selling products to ensure that they're of good value. I mean, they should have been doing. They should have always been doing that, but obviously, in some cases, that wasn't the case. And I mean, I don't want to criticise Agora too much, because they had good things about them as well as bad things, but they definitely had quite a short-term mindset in some cases, where they weren't particularly worried about people staying on for years. They just wanted a steady churn of customers, and if the service is good, then that's an added bonus. Whereas it should be, the service being good is the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, like it's an amazing company in some respects for like the work culture, and like anybody can take an idea and run with it, whatever. But yeah, like the focus back then definitely wasn't on the customer, and like the services were. It was like a market. I don't know what it's like now, but it was like a marketing-led company, and like our promotions, like the copywriting led the products, which is really bad from a. I mean, it's great if like the product then fulfills the copyright, what the copywriting's saying, but it's really bad if it doesn't. But like, to be honest, like on the gambling side, it never really had that problem, because like the tipping services were just good, and if they weren't, then, and because I think everybody on the gambling side, they just want to see a track record. Like I can't, like, unless it's a brand new service, if you're a customer looking at a tipping service, you want to see a track record. And if it's a legitimate, like you've done like third parties auditing track records and stuff like that. So in that case, it's like, whereas on the financial side, you can't legally use a track record unless it's more than, like, I think it's either more than a year or 2 years long. So when your services are new, you can't do that. And then so mostly what's being used is kind of past performance for stuff that's not even your service. So like, it's just look at some stocks that have gone up. I'd say, if you want to go back to talking about what people should watch out for and stuff, if somebody's just saying to you, look how much you could have made on these stocks, or look how much you could have made even on tips, like look how much you could have made on these tips, but they didn't actually make those tips. They're kind of just pointing at like big examples that have nothing to do with them, and then promising that they're gonna like pick similar things. Like, that's a big thing to look out for. And also like stuff like urgency is like I don't know what it is about some like the feeling of urgency, like the feeling of you're going to miss out on something with like. And I just say, like, when people have like close down dates and stuff, or limited spaces, like, it's just making sure that you just see if they've got an actual reason for that, or if they're just saying it for, like to push you into buying something. And like again, I've like, that was what I was taught. Like you put like some element of urgency in every promotion to like urge people to buy, and like. The thing is, if it's not true, like, people quickly cotton on to that fact, and it erodes trust between, you and your customer, and like, because you're just lying to them. Basically.
Like, no, that's definitely a bugbear of mine. I'm sure for a few years, every single promotion for every single product had some sort of deadline, and
but then like, marketers get scared of, and me as well, like, scared of taking it out. Like, it's like, well, and it's like, there's all kinds of like psychology, like psychology books that you're supposed to read as a marketer, and this is the, people react to like fear and greed, and it's really like, it is quite a cynical industry in a lot of ways, like, because it looks at, it's all, like, it's about. It kind of is fundamental. Well, actually, no. There's different perspectives on it, but the worst perspective is that it's about manipulating people's emotions, and like, like, oh, yeah, and that's kind of the worst.
Yeah.
The worst of it, I'd say, is like using kind of those ideas to manipulate people. Like, and I'd say the best of it is taking a kind of a complicated idea that is making one gambler a lot of money, and then kind of translating that message in a way that's exciting for lots of other people. Like, to me, that's the thing, is like, how do I encapsulate what this person's doing in kind of one phrase or one kind of like core idea that just connects with people? But that's much harder to do than promising people a load of money. Which is why people generally just promise people a load of money, or like
I think although you should never blame customers or people buying services from getting sucked into the dodgy ones. Sometimes you need to take a certain element of responsibility when you're buying something. I think if it looks too good to be true, it's not necessarily that it's dodgy, but do a bit more research before you sign up. I think you should never be afraid to email the person selling it and ask for more evidence. If they can't provide it, then don't buy it. If they can provide it, then great.
Yeah, and I think one of the really good things that I've seen you doing is like using Telegram and stuff, and I've done that on something I'm working on at the moment. And it's like, when you get into it doesn't have to be Telegram, but any kind of like chat with somebody or via email, and they're responding to your questions, you can it gives you a much better gauge on what that person's like. Do you know what I mean? And whether you can kind of like, I don't know, like you can tell if somebody's bullshit. Sorry, I wasn't allowed to swear. You can tell if somebody's bullshitting you, like when you're chatting with them on a Telegram messaging, whatever. Like maybe a bit easier than just reading a promotion.
Definitely. I think been lots of really good tips, and a lot of it's quite sort of common sense, but stuff that you might not necessarily think about, because I know it's easy to get sucked into to a good promotion. I guess a lot of it is as you say, avoiding promotions which are full of filler and just generic stuff, and maybe trying to look more for products where there's more detail.
Yeah, I would say, like, just on the flip side of what we've been talking about, it is sometimes sometimes you do have a really good product that isn't selling, and sometimes that's just because like the amount of people that are interested in that kind of thing. Like, I can think of like several things, like income investing. I work with a guy who was a big income investor, and it was, like what he was, he's a guy that's kind of like been able to retire I think he retired in his mid-40s basically, and then sustained his kind of income from home and that kind of thing. So he's like legitimately somebody that's done that and lives that life. But ultimately, like, the ideas and what he's talking about are really quite boring. And it's like, on one hand, it's like, okay, like, they're just not very interesting to read about, but actually they would give people like the result that they want. Like, for anybody that's like him, that had saved up a bit of money and then wanted to like make an income on that money, and kind of get out of the rat race and that kind of thing. But it just like, it's either boring when you talk about the technical details of it, or when you just focus on the result, it just sounds like a generic scam thing where you're like, oh, this guy's out of the rat race and it's not, he's not working a 9 to 5 anymore. So like, I do think like that's when it's like probably really important to be able to come up with like an engaging, interesting idea that's different and and often, but it has to be like genuine. It has to really like, and often those ideas come from something that person says that they don't think is that interesting, or like, like I don't know if this isn't great help for people who are trying to dodge scammy promotions, but
I think it makes sense. I think just to finish, it's interesting the sort of the path you've gone through, because I'm sure you won't mind me saying that you're not someone who's traditionally really interested in sports and betting. Like, you didn't grow up watching football and that sort of thing.
No, I mean, my hobby is skateboarding, so I don't know if that counts as a sport.
But you've gone, as you say, you sort of did financial promotions for a while, then you moved on to, you prefer the sports betting side, and now you've actually working with Adam Cheng, who's a guy who also works with us at BetChat, running a training course with him.
Yeah. That's been like, because I've written for, so well, I decided to do this because I kind of just naturally have moved more away from the marketing, and the more people I've worked with, the more I've kept thinking about like starting my own kind of product. But I don't have an expertise, like you say, I don't have an expertise in gambling. But then I thought, I can work with somebody like Adam, and I really wanted to work with Adam because he's like just a really amazing gambler. Like, yeah. So I forgot what the question is, but yeah, like that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. So if you just, I don't know, maybe tell us a little bit about that training service. No, it's called Bet Mentor.
Yeah. Well, so like, because of the idea, so it's been like hugely eye-opening for me, and I think it'll be, we've been running early access. So basically, it's it's training with Adam, and it's like audio based, and it's audio based. So the lessons are like kind of, there's audio discussions, and then there's a guide, and then there's kind of a video walkthrough, and it's kind of like it's trying to go into like all aspects of his betting. So like from mentality to staking to strategy to, how he prices up stuff, to how he avoids getting his accounts restricted, to, like there's even something in one of the lessons I was just writing today about like how he manipulates odds, like how he sort of uses restricted accounts to manipulate odds and stuff like that. But for, like it's aimed at, some people just want tipping services, but this is kind of aimed at people that want to like kind of, they're interested in like developing their personal betting more, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like they want to kind of, develop their own strategy and kind of, but I think it's kind of helpful for everyone, because a lot of it's kind of like the philosophy and, like his approach. I'm just rambling, but like I've been working in betting for like 7 or 8 years, and but this is the first time I've really just seen in detail how like a professional does it to this extent. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's like we've recorded like hours and hours of discussions, and there's like a lot, like huge amount of content in the guides and stuff. And when I first asked Adam if he wanted to do this, he basically said like, oh, I won't really have anything to say, like, because winning betting's just like easy.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I think he said the same thing to you at some point, didn't he?
Yeah.
But
I mean, as anyone who knows a little bit about Adam will know, his whole background, his education, his work life has been in betting. So I think stuff that comes naturally to him is stuff that other people wouldn't even think twice about. Yeah,
no, at the beginning, he kept saying to me, "Oh, this is common sense," but like, and then he'd say something, and I'd be like, "Nobody knows." That. Like, what? Like he was doing stuff like manually creating his own statistics by counting up stuff on an app that no one else was that didn't automatically kind of list those statistics. So it's just kind of, he just like the more and more stuff like that. Like I don't know. So yeah. Anyway, like there's a free lesson if people want to download it, like an intro lesson to what he does. And it's not like the main focus is not me rambling like this. It's the main focus is him and his betting, and really like getting down to what he does. And I think it's kind of, on one level it's kind of good that I don't have a betting background, because then I ask all the stupid questions, and then that really makes him have to like break down what he's doing and kind of, explain it on like layman's terms.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's, anyway, yeah. It's called Adam Cheng's Football Betting Masterclass.
Yeah, that's great. I'll put a link below this audio chat as well. So if anybody wants to try out that free lesson, they can do.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks very much, Duncan.
That's all right. It's nice talking to you.
Yeah, you too.